export, if you look at an export statement or an import statement where there's no curly braces around the item you're importing, that is telling you need to have a default export that matches that in the file. And the default export is like, if you import from this file, this is the thing I'm going to give you. This is the default export from this file. This will be the first thing. And then if you don't have default, then they're called named import or named exports or named imports. And then that's when you have to the curly braces, because you're trying to select something from like a multiple list. If this file exports like 5 things, which one do you want? But the default export is the one that you can bring in without the curly brace.
I see. Okay. That does make sense. Huh.
And you can have both in the same file, because you could do like a default export, comma, space, curly brace, and then bring a named export from the same file as well. But each file can only have one default export for obvious reasons.
There's a lot of things like this that I kind of like have taken for granted over the years and not really understood. Like, why am I actually doing this? Good examples. Yesterday, I was also investigating, like, when should I be using try catch? Like, what is the actual use case for that? Because I'd had some older code I was referencing, and I noticed that pieces of it were outside, like above the try. And then I have like some other code in the try catch, and so I was thinking, like, well, why am I doing this? Like, what was the decision to put some inside, some outside? And it turns out I just didn't know what I was doing, I think, but it was a misunderstanding with what try catch actually does.
Yeah, it's just it's replacement for the then chaining, right?
Well, I think it has
promise
to do with
then and then catch, right?
no, it has to do with errors. It has to do with as I understand it, it's like a method for essentially catching errors
I mean,
when you're not
that's
sure what the error is going to be.
yeah. Oh, okay.
Otherwise, you would just put
it
in
accompanies the new async
conditionals.
await, right? It accompanies the new async await syntax, which is so try catch and async await kind of go together to replace the dot then way of handling promises in the past, right? You have the then block, then block, then
See,
block, and then
that's what I
catch.
thought, because I was always using it in conjunction with async await, but I'm not sure. I could be wrong actually, but I'm not sure if they're actually connected conceptually or if they're just commonly used together. Something to
That's
investigate more.
possible.
Yeah.
I think my experience has only ever really been seeing try catch used in conjunction with async await around promises. That just, like you said, that might just be the most common form. But
it might also be that
maybe it does work elsewhere.
promises like introduce a level of like uncertainty in terms of like, I don't know what kind of error I'm going to get from this or that, and so it's like it's good to just have something that catches all. Because basically, what happens is the code in a try executes, and then if it can't finish, it produces an error, which then it prints to the console or however you've chosen to handle it.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. It's always good to like hone our understanding just a little bit more every time.
There's always a little bit of a deeper level. Like even having researched at least looked into some of this stuff, there's quite often like another level of depth of understanding of such concepts, which is kind of what we're here for anyways. But so yeah, that conversation is how we're opening our stream today. A little bit of try catch and promises async await business. Welcome everybody back to another episode of Upskill and Chill. Courtney, how has your day been going so far?
It's been okay. It's been long, actually. You know, I mean, we talked about it last week, but I'm waking up super early these days, 5 in the morning. Oof. Those are going to sleep hours for a musician. So now that they're my wake hours, it's a very strange dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely.
How about you? What's good with you, Spencer?
What's good today is that I have been hitting the other stealth, still to be unnamed project that Courtney and I are both working on at this point. I've been hitting that hard today, And I will say that I am successfully minting tokens from a smart contract. We'll say that much. So making progress forward. Again, the deadline on that thing is at the end of the month. So trying to push hard for that. They're getting a lot closer. Starting to come together. Feeling good about that. So um,
But the technical problems are deep. I'll say that.
yes, yeah. Courtney's been thrown in the deep end just a little bit, being kind of our resident back end guy, having to deal with like back end stuff authentication back end stuff of all things.
Of all things, very important, but a very deep field, of course.
Yeah, I'm over here just trying to make buttons look pretty. But yeah, it's been good. It's been a good day so far. So far today has been nothing but nonstop code, and then break for lunch, and now back to code. So we are jumping right back into our project. And last we were here, Courtney was completely gutting our entire to do app and rearranging and reforming everything, going from a much more client side React style architecture, and experimenting now with this server side, server first. I don't know how you what the terminology would be there, inside of the next project, right? Using server components primarily, and then choosing where to use client, instead of just desperately pasting use client at the top of every file that you have in order to just make the errors go away. uh, and on that front, Courtney, did you want to show the little bit about the icon, the
Yes,
icon laundering that we're doing here, and explain what it is and why we're doing it real quick?
absolutely. Yeah, so last week we'd run into a problem with one of our icons, and I think I fixed it off screen actually. This was my original solution, but I'm going to show you another way to do this as well. But the problem was this. Basically, this whole server component, client component dynamic is so new that most third-party libraries are still built to work within client components, and you will get errors if you try to implement client third-party functionality and components within your server components. And so, because they don't have the tag on them, but they do require that client functionality. So one way to get around that is to turn them essentially into a client component. And so what we've done here is we've imported our trash icon, and we're also exporting it. And it's very simple, and just tagging it with use client. So now it knows that it's an actual client component that's going to sit within a server component. A little bit of interactivity that sits within a larger server component for that matter. And then one thing Spencer and I were talking about is potentially having one file that we use to actually export all of our icons. So he's already got the changes saved, so I won't do it right here. But we renamed this trash.tsx to icons.tsx. And so that we can export a group, we're going to remove the default and instead export trash like this, and whatever else we end up importing into this file essentially. And then we just have to make sure that we add the curly braces when we import them. And this gets rid of a whole class of issues that we could run into as we continue to convert from client to server and so forth.
Yeah, exactly. So that's gonna be our pattern for that, because we're already this far down the road, and a big goal for setting out into this whole project was to explore next and learn next more. And Courtney has been doing a lot of research and learning on the whole client side aspect of it. So figured we should implement that and learn from it and use it. So we're gonna keep pushing in the direction of leaning towards towards the server side with everything that we can, and then putting use client where necessary. And this is also making me realize that date FNS apparently works on the server, because we have that in
Yes,
here.
I noticed that too. It was causing no issues, and we've done nothing with data FNS. Just importing it as one does normally, and it seems to operate correctly. Where are we using this? Oh, right here.
Yep, the
Yeah,
format.
yeah, seems to have no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess one thing I'll note, I suppose, once now that I'm starting to get the hang of the client server component paradigm, it does look a little cleaner to a degree. We're no longer importing use state, use effect, and then running all these handlers to basically maintain that state. Uh, we haven't seen yet if there's any drawback to the approach that we're taking. If there's any reason why like people would prefer that, other than maybe that's just a more traditional way to use React or Next. But I'm liking it so far. I'm a big fan of squishing our components into a small a package, as easy to read a package as possible. So
Yeah.
so far so good.
Yeah. So then, just because you mentioned like use effect and use state, where it becomes necessary to do that, we would just create a client component that would take care of that functionality. Is that correct?
Yeah, let
Or there's a
me.
certain part of that that's going to be dealt with on the server side,
Um, yes,
but the server
and
doesn't have state and all that. Oh, there's the refresh again. Uh-oh. do 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 do. Here we
strikes again.
go.
Sorry, y'all. I swear someday I'll be a professional and figure out how to correctly refresh the right page. Okay, here we go.
So what's the yeah? Were you going somewhere, or I was asking kind of like what's the dance we do now with like use state, use effect, using those React hooks inside to do logic,
Yeah,
or is there
I
going
was
to be a
gonna.
total replacement for that on the server side?
No, but I did want to kind of illustrate with the app itself, like what this flow actually looks like. Luckily, we've done some styling on our app, so you can actually see kind of regions of what's going on here. So, for instance, so we know client components are basically components that require some kind of dynamic content generation or interactivity on the
Yes.
front end. So this generally means any kind of state that you're actively maintaining will be dynamic. So originally that was like us maintaining the state of these inputs directly through state.
Hmm.
But it could be something as simple as like displaying a name based on user input or some kind of data, something like that, right? The other thing are event handlers. Anytime you need to essentially perform a JavaScript action based on user input. So, like buttons, for instance, are a little different. Right now, our submit button, it's not technically triggering it's triggering a server action
Hmm.
anytime we want to submit, which is I don't fully understand why that's different from say assigning an actual on-click function, except to this button. I mean, except that on-click functions create an event, which means that if we want to perform an action from that, we would need to use some JavaScript to like target that specific event and cause something else to happen. So, for instance, we've had to disable these delete or trash icons currently because if we're looking at this is the button within a task that has the trash icon.
You are no longer sharing your screen if you think
Oh my gosh, totally. I just
okay.
realized I wasn't sharing any of that.
That's
I
right.
wonder.
I think everything you were just talking about was fine. I was waiting for you to like clearly seem like you were pointing to something on the screen and then mention it.
So yeah, what I was talking about before, these are our inputs that we were maintaining state through. So this was a client component. This whole I think this whole page originally,
Probably, yeah.
um, and the tasks themselves were also client components, and we've been able to actually reduce almost all of this to a server component. So reducing the load of the bundle rather of JavaScript that we send to the front end or to the client to our web browser in favor of sending HTML, which is smaller in size, and most of this doesn't need to be interactive, which I think is the core of what we're getting at here.
Okay.
So, for instance, I was pointing to this button before, this submit
Yeah.
button. Um, Before we were performing a function, a handle submit function, every time we click the submit button, which required some amount of JavaScript because we were setting it up through React's on click property that exists on buttons. But now the button is just triggering a server action, which we set up. Well, I guess actually we set it up in
In
this
action.
library. This,
Yeah.
yeah, this is our add task server action. Um, but we had all of this handle change and handle submit code that we originally had, and this was basically JavaScript that we were running every time that we were either changing in the input fields or submitting, like triggering. What were we doing? We're preventing the refresh of the page, and then we also were actually performing a fetch call within this. So now we've gotten it to the point where we mostly have server components with little islands of interactivity or dynamically generated content. And so, in terms of what we're doing now, I'm not sure what a fully client component would look like outside of a thing like what we might do today, which is like making our buttons potentially client components, these trash icons included. That's something. Maybe I'll look that up. I know that we were going to have you take the reins today in terms of building our button, but I'm kind of curious actually. What are some good use cases for like more fully client components? Because honestly, it seems like the design pattern that's being explored or pushed here is to actually reduce client components as much as possible. As you were saying earlier, pushing them as far down the tree of our components as possible, which makes sense.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we should get on to the button thing here real quick. Back to what I was saying about like the idea of use state, use effect, those sorts of things. Specifically for state, I managed to drill into myself this idea that when you're working in React projects, the idea of stateless or I can't remember the term now for a component that does control state and a component that receives state from a parent and doesn't control its own state. I don't remember the name for that, but you're talking about a parent-child relationship between components. And instead of having the child run and control its own state, many times it's beneficial to have the state be in the parent and having it pass down. Specifically, if you have like multiple children that need to speak to each other, if you have the parent have the state up one level, all the calculation can be done there and then just distributed as necessary, as opposed to having to lift state up from one child and pass it over to another child and all that kind of stuff. But here we're talking about, and it doesn't have to necessarily be this way, but my mind went to the idea of like, well, if your parent is now a server component, it's not going to have state. Does that mean we now push state down into the children? How do we handle this like parent-child putting state at the highest level possible distribution system? Does that make more of a case for like a global state manager?
I think the
I'm
true
not
answer
sure.
is maybe it depends. I think one of the things maybe that drove this design pattern is a recognition that like when you're making a GET request, oftentimes this is sort of like for baseline information that your page needs to display, and so server components are well optimized for getting making the GET request before the HTML is actually built out and sent to that front end. So one advantage of utilizing server components to actually communicate with your database is it sits closer to the database. It's closer to your actual data than the client component is.
And the server component can pre-render on the server side with that data in place. So like
Yeah,
you don't
it
you don't
makes that
have
GET
to run
request and
get
then
requests from the front end, which reduces some of the need for state at all on the front end, I suppose, because it's just
yeah,
going to come pre-packaged with it. And then your state really becomes much more about interactivity and less about data.
that's right. That's right.
Okay, we're getting there. We're getting there. We're figuring that
That's
out.
why also
I
our
see that
server
now.
actions are like post, delete, and update requests or patch put. Because like you notice like any so like right now when we populate, let me share again.
This is a good
When we
conversation.
populate,
This is helping me kind of understand a little bit more of the like design pattern and architecture. So this is good.
totally. Yeah, I think this is important for understanding how to even use these server client
Or why? I think it's the
dynamic.
why, right? We've been
The
asking that
why.
for a while. It's like, why would we even use this?
Right, because we have all these tasks saved in our database, right? And so when we navigate to this page, what we're being sent is the server component before it's actually rendered on our screen has made the GET request for all of our tasks, and then populated the page with it. And then anytime we add a new task, like if I created a task now and then submitted it, now we're performing a post request, right? We're creating a new asset or a new post, and the server, so the server action that post request. I'm trying to think of how the best way to put this is. We go back to actions. This function that we run when we make that when we click submit basically performs the post request, creates the new item, and then it revalidates this path, which happens to be our to-do list. And in doing so, only changes, as I understand it, what needs to be changed on the page. So it's not like we're sending an entirely new HTML page every time that happens. It notices, oh, in the task area, there's a new task that we need to put into the flow essentially. And so it's just that edit that's made. So as I understand it, even that is more efficient in the sense that we're not re-rendering the entire page every time we make we perform one of these actions. And one of the reasons that we were talking about creating a button component is that right now our delete task function doesn't work because the button on our task was operating that function through an on-click, which is an event handler, which means that we need some amount of interactivity, which means that it needs to be a client component. So either we need to convert the whole task into a client component, or we convert just the button, this little island of interactivity, into a client component itself, and then it will be able to perform that on-click function. I don't know.
Is there a way to use a server action here instead of an on-click and a client component?
That's a great question. And actually, if you want, we can explore that right now. One thing I was wondering about last week is like, can I put an action on a button? I haven't really looked into this. Let's see. It does not exist. Yeah, see, like buttons don't have the action
Yep.
keyword. I'm wondering though, what does have the action keyword?
Well, you set up an action. Where were we? We were triggering that for the input. Now that was in a form, action add task, right? The form, and then
That's
we have
right. It was in a form component.
we have a submit button. So the form component has an action.
Right.
And I guess that by default is a server action. I think we talked about this last time where your form submit is a server side action. And that's why whenever in React, you always have to do, or in front of JavaScript libraries, you always have to do that prevent default, because by default, the form, when it is submitted, triggers a refresh of the page because it sends a server action, but you have to put in the prevent default to keep it from doing that. So now we're actually like going back to the way the form element in HTML was designed in the first place to do a server action, essentially, and now it's doing a server action again, and we don't have to like short circuit anything, which is very very funny that you're like going back to the original now with everything. It's just kind of silly.
Yeah, it's funny how it goes back and forth like that. Huh? About this. Okay, displaying the form status. This is not answering my question. Oh, invoking a server action from a button, though.
Ooh, button form action instead of action.
Interesting.
Well, that's form. That still has to do with forms. So here you could put the form action on the button instead of on the form element, right?
Okay.
I think that looks like it's probably going to accomplish the same thing.
Okay, it does like that. So,
but
potentially
this is not in a form though. This button.
Yes, that is correct.
That's why. So I'm not sure if that's going to work, because what I'm seeing there, and I don't know if this is correct. We'd have to test it out. Is that Form action allows you to put the action on the button instead of on the form element, right? Like you're just swapping the place of the same thing.
Don't forget something.
Closing bracket.
There it is. Weird.
Okay, it doesn't hate that.
It doesn't hate that. I agree. Okay, let's see.
Can you not do that that arrow function without the curly bracket around the body? Just a one-liner?
You mean just like this?
Yeah, you could.
Yeah, probably could
do a one-liner.
Ooh, I do like one-liners. But it seems like it still doesn't like this. Functions cannot be passed directly to client components unless you explicitly expose it by marking it with use server. Or maybe you meant to call this function rather than return it. Yeah, I think you're probably right that we would need to have some kind of form that this operates in.
That's what that looks like to me, because on that other page, it was still inside of a form.
I guess what I'm wondering though is if I took, where do we define delete task? Right here. What if I created a function inside of our actions page let's not do that. This one. Fetch, delete. We'll just console.log. Deleted. Okay, we don't need the use server tag in here. And actually, yeah, I suppose this still works. So we await the fetch. Since we don't need a response from a delete, we can just revalidate the path after.
And that's just telling the server to like check this path out and this page and see if there's anything different and refresh it, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
It's calling a refresh. Revalidate path sounds super fancy, but it's just like refresh the page, check for anything that needs to be changed, and then do that. Okay.
I guess the only problem here. No, you're right. We need a form because we actually have to pull in form data when we perform one of these server actions. I don't know.
It has to be form data.
Well, I suppose not. But one thing I know that will be a problem is like this construction doesn't work that well for server actions, as far as I understand. When we were building the form action, when we were rebuilding the form, you notice that I'm just passing in add task.
Mm-hmm.
There's no other, like, there's no parentheses.
Yep.
With
no arrow
passing.
function.
Yeah, exactly. And there's no arrow function as well. This is designed so that we get access to the form data. And so maybe there is a way. I'm not saying there isn't, but off the top of my head, I just don't know how we would convert this button necessarily into.
But still be able to pass an argument is what that's kind of what you're getting at, like.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, perhaps it is as simple as like having a form and just passing a hidden input inside of it or something like that. That is taking in the ID that we're already supplying to this task through props.
That feels weird.
That does feel weird. I'm not sure about that.
Hidden elements. That seems hacky. It seems like that there should be something better. Okay. Yeah, lots of questions to continue on with here, though. But I think, I mean, since this is an interactive piece, you know, it works. This is the type of thing where use client comes into play, right? So
yeah, I think so.
I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think that falls within best practices. If I can go that far.
If you can be so bold.
Be so bold, yeah. So talking about buttons, why don't we try and do some buttons, huh?
Let's put a button on it.
So I've got the app here, and then like you were talking about, I made a change here to this kind of like this icon stuff. So this is the syntax I've got now. So we're exporting an object, or we're just, I guess it is an object technically. maybe, because this isn't like a variable, but yeah, wrapping it in curly braces, renaming this to, oh, this is supposed to just be icons. Yeah,
I suppose we're
it still says
exporting an
trash.
object of components or
Right,
whatever else we put
exactly. And
inside.
then where we're bringing this in over here, we're bringing in from icons and then bringing the trash. So we can bring in we can bring in, checkbox or whatever other items we have here. Um, so let me, that terminal's got to load for a second. Here we go. Great. So I want to just get this out of the way. Third-party icons, and then we're also going to add source app components third-party, and then this was deleted, so that should say, yeah, so it's been renamed. And then the only change I have here in task is, oh, there's also this change down here, which is fine. We'll just let that change be there. So I can git add all, git commit. Um, I'll
Just to update too, I think action is really only available on form, as far as I can tell. But
okay.
you can use server actions inside of client components. You just have to mark them as use server, which we have done.
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
Yeah, you can use server actions inside of client components. In this case, like a button. You just have to mark the function itself. So delete task, for instance. If that's a function,
Okay.
it has to be marked as a server action by putting the use server.
And
It's
then
kind of like how you do use client.
you call it through an on click like normal, but then it's going to operate on the server. Is that, or
That's correct.
really interesting? Okay.
Yeah, it's like you trigger the server action that way.
Okay.
At least if what I'm reading here is to be believed.
So,
XJS documentation.
so we got two things here. We've got this is our icon button, our trash delete button here, and
Mm-hmm.
then we also have our submit button. And I was thinking that it might make sense to make two components, make like a standard button component and then an icon button component, because there's really not going to be any like overlap between those two, and it's just going to really make things much more difficult to build trying to put those both in the same component.
It's very different styling, right? That would be
Yeah,
applied to one or the
yeah,
other.
and yeah, everything is quite different. So I think it makes sense to make those two separate components. This one should be pretty simple here. So let's see here. We're going to do our source app components. I guess this is technically the to-do app, so we can put our button here. So button .tsx, and then we want function. I've been starting to do my component construction as functions instead of like arrow functions. More so.
Any reason?
What am I doing? Export default function button. Is that for some? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So we got
any
that.
particular reason for constructing them like non-arrow functions?
A while back, and I think it might have even been for Upskill&Chill, but for one reason or another, this was early on in Upskill&Chill. I went into and I looked up. I remember writing up a post about what is the difference between like function declaration and function expressions. Right. This is a function declaration. A const arrow function is a function expression, and the difference, the two key differences was one of the differences was how they handle the keyword this inside of them, right? One, I can't remember exactly what it is, but one of them redefines the context, maybe context
Arrow functions.
the scope of this, and the other one does not.
Yeah, arrow functions redefine it to being very local. So whatever's happening within the function.
Yeah. And function does not. So function lets this be larger scope. That's what you're saying, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's correct. And then function expressions like this, also those get hoisted inside of files, whereas function expressions do not get hoisted.
What's hoisted mean?
Hoisting, so it has, I want to say, less to do with like stuff in React design, but if you're going to build a project in like vanilla JS, you have your file and you'll have multiple functions, right? Hoisting is the process of when your JavaScript is being compiled. I think that's the wrong term again, but processed. Function declarations like this using the actual function keyword will be hoisted during that process, which means they will be like as if they're defined at the top of the file. So
Oh, okay.
you can, inside of your JavaScript file, you can reference them anywhere because they will automatically be hoisted. You could call a function above its declaration
Oh, interesting.
in
Okay.
your syntax. But if you do a function expression, those are not hoisted, so you cannot access those functions above their instantiation. That makes sense. I think we run into those types of situations much less in React in general. And I mean, now that I'm thinking about it, I mean, I don't know. I think I go back and forth between doing it this way or doing a function expression. Part of it is too, like, when you add like TypeScript typing to these things, that it also is different depending on how you do it. I think a lot of examples
Oh,
actually use function expressions to, where you put your types and everything on this line will change depending on that.
yeah.
Now I'm wondering if I spoke too soon, if I actually have, I don't know. I think in my time as a developer, I've done much more function expression syntax. But okay, I think I'll just move
You can
forward.
continue on. I was just curious.
Yeah. So for a button, let's see. We should define our interface, right?
Yes.
And kind of figure out what it is we're going to be doing here. So we might have like a style. We probably need to define this as a list of things, but I don't know my thought is like a primary or secondary, or I'll just leave it at that as for the options for the moment. That type of idea. This can all be changed to just kind of drafting. So we're gonna need the on click is gonna take in a function. Function void, I think, is gonna be the on click that'll come in. Type. So that one will probably be optional, and then it might be submit or undefined. Would that be, or do I just make it type string here? Because I think the only type I can think of would be submit that we would put in there.
What are the types of buttons?
Let's see. On-click style.
Type attributes. Now this is for button type attribute. Looks like button, submit, or reset are our options.
Yeah. So type is button. There could be a type button as well. Interesting. I'll just put it as string.
Yeah, I think
optional,
button is default. Or actually, is button default or is submit default? Let's see.
I think type button. I think you have to define it as submit. Let's see. Label.
Interesting.
Let's see. Label on submit. What's some other things? I don't know. See, it'll already have a role. Okay. I'm imagining that we're gonna use more, but
This is for. Oh, okay. Do we always want the text to say submit, or do we need to pass? Oh, I guess that's what label is.
yeah, label is gonna
Yeah.
be.
Okay.
I don't know, do we want to have a potential icon? Like, not that it would be an icon button, but sometimes your button's gonna have some sort of an icon on it. Uh,
Yeah, I'd follow your intuition on that.
yeah. And then I think that would be is that going to be a React node type for an icon? Let's see, can we get an overlay here? What kind of type?
Type of icon?
Doesn't give us any information there. Type of icon?
It looks like.
Where's that coming from? From Phosphor. So we don't want to necessarily just do that. So I think React Node, because it will be its own like little component thing, right? Otherwise,
I'm happy to use that and then let it yell at us later.
Would it be like an HTML element potentially? I think we're gonna go with React Node. I think that's proper. React Node could be a string, number, big int, boolean. React element. Maybe it's a React element.
Well, that's already covered in React Node, right?
React element. JSX element. That's another option. Yeah, represents a JSX element. I think that's what we want. Where React Node represents everything that can be rendered, React element only represents JSX. So I think that's more specific to what we're looking for, right? Because an icon component would be a JSX element, right? I guess we'll find out. We'll figure.
Yeah.
We'll find out. So then, yeah, we can also have icon in here.
I suppose you could combine label and icon as React Node in that case, because you could just pass. I don't know what you would want to call it, but like if you're going to pass either a string or an icon in, React Node would allow for both, right?
So combining these two props or making them,
like you could get rid of icon and just have label be React Node, because I think string is one of the things that you can pass.
But what if we want to put in both a label and an icon? That's kind of the use case I'm thinking about, is where you want to have a.
Couldn't you do both in that case?
Through the same prop?
Well, are you going to pass it in between? You know where it says submit right now?
Yeah. So the idea would be, it'd be like label would go here.
Then I think you could pass it into the same prop. But I understand that would not necessarily be the most readable solution or the most elegant looking one. So
yeah. And I think the idea here, I don't know, is it kosher to put a div inside a button? Because I'm thinking about how to. So the things that I've seen before is that like you have options through your props. Like we could put something in here, icon, position, and this would be left or right, let's say.
okay.
And then you could decide which side of on which side of the label you want.
Oh, I see. You might have like, I don't know, a thumb or a heart or something to the left or right of.
To the left or the right of the text.
Or submit or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So having that flexibility inside of the button, and
then I see that. That's a strong move.
So then I'm trying to think, like inside of a button, because otherwise you use like a span, but that doesn't really. I don't know. So what we would do is, let's see.
You just pass it in above label.
Yeah. like icon position equals left, and then we do icon. Or would it? No, we don't make it a thing like that. It's already going to be a thing like that. We just put in icon like that.
I think so.
And then here, like this. Cannot find icon position. Oh yeah, because we didn't bring it in here. Okay. So we have the label icon position. So now the problem here is that these are all just going to be like right smack dab next to each other. If we want to do any sort of like spacing, we have to, work with our classes and stuff out here. But for the moment, let's just. I want to try this out. We won't go too far. Oops, before we actually give it a shot. So if we do button. I want to make sure, yeah, button from here. Very good. So this is our button, and then it needs, let's see, so our label can be submit. What's going on? Yeah, so it wants on click, which we can just leave like that for the moment. I think. Is that not happy with that? And then, so icon position, this is going to be there. That's going to be optional. Type is going to be optional. On click is going to be necessary. Style, that should probably be standard, but at the moment we'll do. Oh, I'm putting these in all the wrong spots. Oh my
I wasn't even
goodness.
thinking about that myself.
Yeah. Okay. Oops. Optional. Click on click will be mandatory. We'll make style optional for the moment, just because it's not defined yet. So something like that. And then what are we looking at here? Okay, let's, because nothing's changed, let's do something very obvious. Okay, there's our button. All right, so this is the button component. Great. So far, so good. So then if we were to, I know I still have this open, and that's convenient. So let's just put trash in here real quick. We'll add some trash.
Throw some trash in it.
And then let's make icon, and let's, oops. I think that's how we would do that. And then over here in our button icon, so this is where we need to have like a default, right? So
yeah.
Icon position can default to left.
Yeah, that feels right.
Okay. Now, yeah. See, this is the problem now, is that we're going to run into some CSS issues here. So we could make this. We'd have to add like flex. We'd added flex to the button by default here. Then we get that, and then we need justify center, items center.
Tailwind should really create one class that like does both of those things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, most of it, like in our other project, I'm using Daisy UI, and for that you would just go button primary, or just button, right? Would like put it into the shape of the button, just one class, right? We could create a composite class, a higher, whatever the name would be, a composite class or something like that. So here, and then we could also go.
Oh no, I mean it just does justify and items center. Like I feel like I have to use those
those
together
two?
so many times. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Just like flex center.
or something.
Yeah, flex, like center all or something like that,
Full
right?
center.
Yeah, full.
Yeah.
um, now here is, let's see, is this working? Is this doing any spacing? No, it is not. And this is my question about the idea that we're just throwing these in here. I think this is gonna, at the very least, this needs to be a span to give it an actual element. There we go. Now it's gonna work. Because this icon is a component or an element, and this, but then this is just text within the button, so CSS isn't going to be able to like grab it and start moving it. So if we put the label inside of a span, oh, and I think I did that incorrectly. We need to do it this way.
Right. You just want to pass the label.
That's why I said label, and now it'll say submit.
Oh, there totally. I didn't even catch that.
The only reason there we go. I got some nice, a little bit of spacing. The only reason I noticed is because label wasn't red; it was back to like the text white or whatever in my code color scheme. Okay, so that's how an icon will work. So then, if we come back over here, and we were to go icon position right. Cha-ching!
Hey, there it is. Nice.
Okay, so we got some. So very good. So that we're not going to have those on this button, but we know it works. Fantastic, and it just looks all like it did before. So let's see. We got label, icon. So the on click and the type. So this would be type, then type. Otherwise, like probably just nothing or an empty string. Even, or it defaults to button, right? So that would be our fallback for the.
Yeah, it defaults to button unless it's inside of a form. I found out if it's comboed with a form, it defaults to submit.
It doesn't like that. Is that because type is type of string?
Let's see. Type string is not assignable to type.
I think it doesn't like the idea that
it has to be one of those.
Yeah, it wants it to be that list. Button. Is this already a type that we could import? I'm not sure. Submit.
Like button type.
Yeah. What? Button submit. What was the other ones?
Reset and undefined.
Like as a string, undefined.
It looked like it was not a string.
Yep. Undefined. Okay. So it'd be one of those. So then we could maybe just put type as type, right? And then that's just going to be fine. Okay. And then
nice
our
and easy.
On click will be on click. Just pass it to that, right? Now, what if on click comes in with like arguments?
So what arguments would you need? Essentially the event?
Or any argument. I mean, what if the function here, some function, and then I want to put in like an ID and a name. If my on click function. No, wait. Oh, we're okay. Hold on. Hold the phone. We will be passing in. Yeah. So I think we. Oh man. Like props or args, right? Where would the
be like spread args? Is that what it is? Spread operator, I mean.
Yeah, but like where would those args would be coming in here?
I think so. Like that? Which you would have to type as any, but that would be, I mean, that makes sense. This is actually a good use case, I suppose, for the any keyword. It's not just like circumventing TypeScript.
an array of.
I don't know why it's an array. Oh, I guess it's 'cause it's just a set of args. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that would come in the on click, and then do we put this inside of a thing here and then args? Is that how that works? I haven't actually done that before. I don't think. I'm blanking a little bit on because we want it to be a we pass in
Well, the
any
thing is, there might not
function.
necessarily be args, so we have to
Yeah.
make that optional. Or is the way you might not even need to do this args thing.
We just pass in whatever the function is.
Like get rid of all those parameters. Yeah. Does it throw up an issue if you build it the way that no, like just have it be on click is equal to on click. No, yeah. It doesn't seem to dislike that thus far.
Yeah. I mean, it's just gonna pass in all of this, right? It's just gonna take this would be a case of encapsulation, or is that the term, or what's the JavaScript term that I'm blanking now.
Oh. I looked up encapsulation. I got the.
It's one of those. It's one of those JavaScript technical interview terms that people recommend. It's a subject.
Encapsulation is the packing of data and functions into one component, for example, a class, and then controlling access to that component to make a black box out of the object.
Encapsulation is in my mind, is part of OOP architecture or patterns.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about another term where you do something like this and these will be prepackaged and it'll all be kind of grabbed together and whatnot. But okay, so we got our on click. We haven't done anything yet with like making the styles more changeable and whatnot, like primary, secondary, but that's okay for right now. Let's see if we can do an on click here. Again, we're doing this. We want this to be a use client specifically.
Yes, that's right. We want this to have the option to be, which means it'll have to be a use client.
Right. So, we wanted this. This is our submit button. And I guess just as type submit, we're not going to do an on click here in this one because it's going to be of type submit, and this is inside the form, and then the action is happening in the form. So,
which means that on submit is actually optional.
On click is optional, yes. So this would be on click, then on click, otherwise null, or do we just put an empty function here?
That's a great question. How do you dynamically?
Because if it's present, then we use it. If it's not present, then we just put it does nothing.
Yeah, that feels right.
Yeah, for right now.
Couldn't you just do on click or anonymous function? Like just double question mark.
Doesn't like that. Whoa.
No, do the double question marks, I think.
Oh.
It doesn't like.
Nullish.
Oh, it doesn't like that either. Okay, never mind. Weird.
Yeah, I see what you're trying to do.
If that exists, do that.
Because you could do the and, right? But
yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting that it doesn't let you do that. But maybe because then it doesn't have a fallback in case it's not defined. I don't know.
I'm not sure. You know what I probably would have done, and this can't be right either, is like if there's no on click, do this button instead. Otherwise, it's like a copy of this button without on click on it. But that can't be right. There must be a better way to write that.
Yeah, I mean it's taking this and it looks like that'll work. so here we have on submit, we have the button.
Let's test that. Let's see if it actually works.
So actually, we need to pass in a type of submit because we didn't. Yeah, we hadn't defined the type yet, and type is just going to be type in here. Yeah, that was kind of my thought too. Is like, okay, so now we've got, see if that action will work. This is from the no, okay. Test task. This is from the new button. Submit. Ah, look at that.
Nice. Hey, works.
That was fast and snappy too.
Fast and snappy, the way we like.
Okay. So at the moment we have that done for at least for that button as it stands.
Yes,
There's more customization, for styling or there's a bunch of different things I could see that we could make possible there. But again, that is now allowing us to do that form. So that's working properly as server, right? This button is use client, but it's working in the server. It's calling the server action, working very well. Then how quickly can we do something with this trash button? So if we take all of this and we make, oops, nope.
Oh no, a virtuoso.
Yeah, those are super critical. Let's see, components to do, and then we go icon button.tsx, and we put this here. Now let's see. So we've this is going to take a little bit. So our button is very much built for us already, at least as far as this goes.
That's convenient.
So I'm just going to put this in here. It's going to scream at us, but so we're gonna replace the classes. Oofta, that really went sideways really quickly. Okay. Yeah, let's see. So maybe we do it this way. We'll put the type in there. We'll add the on click. We're probably gonna need those as well, I'm thinking.
That makes sense.
We'll put those in there. We'll see what we end up, some sort of monstrosity, but is gonna happen here, but that's okay. There we go. Okay, so then with the icon button, icon is not going to be optional. Icon position will be optional. The label will be optional because it might not have a label. Type, I don't think we do the type on an icon button. Our ARIA label.
Won't it still have a function though?
Sorry.
Won't it still need to be a button? Like function. I mean, what am I saying? I guess they'll all just be buttons. They're not going to be submitting.
Right. We're not going to make an icon button the submit button. I mean, you could, but I'm trying. I'm just curious. Style will still leave that.
I'm in favor. I like eliminating as much. For common components, it's best to not have to like enter every single piece of information every time.
Label. Now I'm thinking we're gonna want an ARIA label because it's an icon button, and that's best practice is when you when you do an icon button, you need to add an ARIA label because otherwise screen readers won't have anything to go off of because you're not necessarily going to have text like a label in there at all. And if you do that, just the icon, it doesn't have anything to go off of. It doesn't have anything to the screen reader doesn't have anything to read back to the user, right? Because it's just a picture of something.
Right.
So this ARIA label will go there. No type. We'll have the on click again. We've got icon position. label or nothing. Can we just do that? And so it takes it there, right? If
yeah, that makes sense. I always forget what the difference between the two. I don't even know what the symbol is called. The two standing up lines and the
yeah,
two question marks is.
yeah, it's logical or. This is logical or, and there's logical and. And is gated if you want to think of it that way. So if the item on this, so if we had like this, if we for and, if label is truthy, not true or false, if it's truthy, then it will produce whatever you have over here. The or, if this is truthy, it will stop here. Otherwise, this will happen. So if this is
No,
false,
what about the two question marks?
two question marks, that's the nullish coalescing. That's
Nice.
specifically looking for null or undefined here. If this is specifically null or undefined, then it will do this.
Very good. You that's the textbook definition. I was looking it up. you got the name and everything. Nullish coalescing.
Yeah, I just saw that a few weeks ago on a post, and I shoved it into my memory because
I love it.
that's very useful. So and then there's
So
a
right
specific
now it's looking for a truthy value, basically.
right. If this is if label is true, which means it's not empty string, right?
It's not empty string, zero,
And
undefined,
here
null.
I'm defaulting label to an empty string. I mean, I probably don't need to do this because label is going to be optional. So if nothing,
Yeah.
if label doesn't exist, right, it'll be falsy, and then that means that it will kick over to this side, right?
Mm-hmm.
At least it should. So let's see what we got for an icon button so far here. Let's move this over here, and then we come over here, and we'll go icon button. Okay, it's not gonna just bring that in for me. So import icon button from here app components to do icon button. And then here we need icon has to be defined. And this is where we do trash. And then what else is mandatory? Aria. Yeah, Aria label's the only other like mandatory thing. So I keep saying area. Aria label. I don't know about. Yeah, I'll go all lowercase for that.
That feels right.
Okay, so now if we do that, there should be two trash can icons. Boom. Okay.
Double the trash.
We just doubled the trash. Now check that out. We got some weird spacing going on inside of that button, and I'm sure that has to do with. Let's see. So it's defaulting to left. Is that doing it because we have an empty string here? Is that creating space there? Yes, it is.
So now it's like you have to return JSX, basically. Or it's like if label you want the spans with the label inside of it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you're right. We put this in here. Otherwise, so if we're going to do that or null, then we don't have to do a ternary. We can do the and. If label exists, then we do label.
Oh yeah, I like that.
Otherwise, we don't. Otherwise, it's nothing, right? So there. Okay, now we don't have
Beautiful.
that weird space. And then if we were to be here and we say, we want a label, and we put trash in there, we have trash. Tash.
It's different.
Oh man. Okay. And then if we went icon, just because this is fun, position right, It's really fun to like build something and then see it work.
Yay!
Woo! Cool. So we have
Okay.
a flexible button.
Now let's pass it the on click and see if we can make it delete delete the task.
Yeah. See, so we're getting
This
delete
probably
task
won't work.
is getting passed in, and
Right.
then no, that was on your side. So I'm not going to worry about trying to move that over into the actions. We still want to try and export those out into like their own thing. Let's see. So here is what I was wondering. So so this is ID string is not assignable, right?
Okay.
Target signature provides too few arguments. So this is where do we need args in here? Yep. Okay. Now the error went away. If nothing else, the error went away. So you're saying it could be a function with any number of arguments, and then that function is going to be passed on here. So we don't have to do anything down there like I was thinking before. So then, does delete task still work? Like if we're going to try it now, is it supposed to? Okay, we also need to say goodbye.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now this trash has a size. I had put a very specific size on here as well. Of 17. Okay. And our to-do list is getting out of hand on this here. But let's go down here and delete. Error. 500 internal server error. Yeah. We've done so much like server stuff around that
So what doesn't it like?
connection closed at TP. Yeah, I don't know. Let's see what time we got going on here. All right, we're a little bit past 2.
Oh yeah.
I think that's largely successful. Built a couple new components. I always love doing that. It's a fun practice to go through. I like UI development. There's more that can be or to be done, but so I'm also going to put this here because we're going to need that in there. And this is, I think the appropriate use of any, because it literally is supposed to be any.
Can the args be optional as well, or is that already kind of the default understanding that you might not have any arguments?
I think that is the default. So let's go over here and no. No, that function does have argument. Do we have a function that does not in this scope? I guess I could quickly just go const test function equals oops. Ah! Butterfingers. Return 4. Return 5. Sure. So now we have test function, which is a function. Yeah, it's not screaming at us. Yeah, I think that. Yeah, I think that spread means 0 or more, right? Just spread whatever the arguments are, and if there's nothing to spread, then there's nothing to spread.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah, sweet. We've got some new components. We just have to figure it. We have to actually get them working appropriately specifically with the delete task, sending signals off to our, because that function is here, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, delete task is right here. And that
maybe
actually
it's because
means
it triggers get tasks in the body.
That actually means when we do this, I can't type. we actually need to pass that ID, right? Because it has to be the
I
ID
think
from.
so.
Yep.
Yeah.
Argument of type string. String undefined is not assignable to type string. Not assignable to type string or undefined.
Is ID mandatory
So,
in our task prompts?
Task data ID.
Oh, the task type. That's in our global file, right?
Mm.
You know what? An ID is defined as optional in our global type.
Okay. So then, what do we got to do? Like string
So if you
null.
can't
So
pass null, right?
ID then ID.
Isn't that the same as passing just ID?
Yeah. What am I thinking right now? Yeah, ID
Originally we'd
or
said that tasks have to have an ID, and where do they not have an ID?
is this a case for nullish coalescing then? So if ID is null or undefined, it's going to pass just an empty string because it is of type this. Our function here takes a string, an ID string.
Potentially. Does this work?
Yeah, this is not screaming at us now.
No, I mean like if you navigate and press the button, will it delete the task?
Rebuilding.
Oh, there's the loading.
Oh,
That's our suspense. Event handlers cannot be passed to client component props.
so this is a server component, but our icon button is a client component. On click.
Oh, event handlers cannot be passed to client component props.
This is our event. Oh, this says use server. Can we pass a use server function into a client component? Is that what it's not liking?
It might be. It might be. We might have to redesign delete task.
Let's see if that. Still is not liking it.
Yeah, it doesn't like that either.
Okay. So we have a broken app again.
Yay! Just where we like to leave it.
Yeah. We had some good success, and then I mean this is going to be a big learning point of like how we can pass these things around and how we can't, and like what the hoops we have to jump through to do such things. Cool. I think we can leave it there.
That's fine with me.
Cool. We got both of those
stuff,
components built up. Yeah, fun. I
You're
really
a wizard
enjoy that.
on the front end.
I like to think so. At least that's my skill set. So if I'm not good at that, then what am I doing? I love UI development. That kind of stuff is super fun. I know that it can go really really deep, but it would be kind of cool. Like I think a dream job is if I'd have to develop the skill for it and the knowledge, but a dream job would be to like contribute to or maintain a prominent like UI library. Like
Oh, that's really cool.
something like that
Yeah,
would be kind of
I see
cool.
that.
Or I've had in the back of my head for a long time that I would love to build my own component library. Not necessarily to like become a standard anywhere, but actually like create a library of components, a button, a card, a modal, a header, different things like standard components like that, and then actually like roll it and put it on NPM. That'd be cool.
You should do that. That's the
I
next
should.
project.
I should. It's been a
Spencer UI.
an idea. Yeah,
What would you
Spencer.
call it?
It'd be fun. It'd be fun. The thing that I've seen, the last thing I'll say on this is that I've seen components being defined in like definition files. So like they're not, at least at certain, there's something that I'm missing here. I do not know how this works at all, but like the component is being defined like as logic as opposed to like HTML and CSS almost.
Hmm.
It looks really weird. I've gone into some of those components trying to look for answers in different bug search, bug solving like expeditions, and I end up in one of those files like, how is this a component? What am I even looking at? It's really bizarre. So I'd have to look up some
Interesting.
information about how like what that is and why and all that. But anyways, yeah,
Questions
fun
for another
stuff.
time, huh?
Yeah. Any final thoughts?
No, at the moment. I guess, yeah. This is all. These are all deep fields. It's so funny how we set out to do a thing and we get completely diverted into another thing just to facilitate the original plan. Today
Yeah.
was good. Today you set out to make one button component, but you actually got two made.
I'll just let that say more about my wizardry.
That's right.
I mean, I
That's
copy
right.
and pasted and then changed like 3 lines and it worked. So,
Isn't that all we're all doing? We're just copying and pasting
yeah.
over and
So
over.
then, I mean, there you could almost think about, I don't know if this would be efficient or not, but like having like a standard form button that you would then import into the others to make them more specific. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like you have one central location for all the stuff that's common between those two, and then you
Okay.
make another component like on top of that that has the specifics.
Oh, yeah. I
I could
could
see
see
that
that.
being efficient just for, dry, right? Don't repeat yourself.
Yes.
So, oh, not today. Cool. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Thank you for Courtney for hanging out, and this was a ton of fun. And we will see y'all next week.
Bye, everyone. Have a good weekend.
All right, so we are done streaming to LinkedIn. I'm just gonna end the live cast here as well right away.
Woohoo!